Yeah, now everybody sees that actually Speaker Pelosi's visit to China's Taiwan island has already caused great intensity, not only actually in this region, but also unease worldwide. If you ask me how I should look at that, I think her trip to China's Taiwan island is by nature a move, very irresponsible move by the US government to instigate separatist activities on the sovereign state in China. Taiwan is just part of China. Taiwan island is the territory of China. That said, I think the Americans have already been told by the Chinese side repeatedly, don't try to underestimate China's will and ability to preserve China's unity.
Kedatangan Ketua DPR Amerika Serikat Nancy Pelosi ke Taiwan pada 2 Agustus 2022 lalu menuai kontroversi. Banyak yang menganggap kunjungan ini sebagai bentuk dukungan Taiwan yang ingin memisahkan diri dari China, sehingga berujung dengan dilanggarnya kebijakan One China atau Satu China. Di saat yang bersamaan, kunjungan Nancy Pelosi juga mengindikasikan akan adanya kerjasama antara Amerika Serikat dan Taiwan dalam industri microchip. Industri microchip ini nantinya bisa membuat persaingan antara Amerika Serikat dan China semakin memanas. Lagi-lagi, hal ini semakin menjauhkan Taiwan dari One China policy. Lantas, bagaimana tanggapan Duta Besar China untuk Indonesia, Lu Kang, terkait hal ini? Mari kita bahas lebih dalam program To The Point bersama saya, Alia Bunga. Hey, Mr. Ambassador, hello.
Good morning, Alia. Welcome to my residence.
Thank you so much. It's very comfortable in here. Thank you so much for allowing us to come.
My pleasure to be with you here this morning. Sit down, please.
Thank you. Mr. Ambassador Lu Kang, thank you so much once again for allowing us to come here with Kumparan. Thank you for your time. So without further ado, let's get to the point.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So for the past week, the world's eyes have been on what's happening in Taiwan, right? So this is related to the visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taipei last week. So could you please tell me how does China view the U.S. action about this?
Yeah, now everybody sees that actually Speaker Pelosi's visit to China's Taiwan island has already caused great intensity, not only actually in this region, but also unease worldwide. If you ask me how I should look at that, I think her trip to China's Taiwan island is by nature a move, very irresponsible move by the US government to instigate separatist activities on the sovereign state in China. So actually, this is a blunt violation, breach of norms, those basic norms governing international relations. Definitely, that's an infringement upon China's sovereignty and integrity. So then you can see why China is strongly against her move.
So to sum it up, you are saying that China thinks Nancy Pelosi's visit is a violation to One China policy?
Yeah.
Do you mean that?
Definitely.
Yes.
That's a apparent violation of what they claim, the U.S. commitment to the One China policy. But something beyond that is also a violation of the basic norms governing international relations, set a very bad precedent.
I see. But on the other side, the U.S. thinks that China violates the international laws. For example, based on what's happening in Xinjiang, for example, what's happening in Hong Kong. So what do you think about this? They blame China, and China thinks they're the one who violates.
You can ask those Americans who told you China violated, in their view, the international laws in Xinjiang, in Hong Kong, whether they agree that both Xinjiang and Hong Kong are just part of China. What happened on both Xinjiang and in Hong Kong are internal affairs of China. That said, what happened in Xinjiang is the efforts, joint efforts by all ethnic groups there to develop, to enjoy a better life, especially to stop those secessionists, those separatist activities, those terrorist activities. So maybe some Americans in the United States, they don't want to see that. What happened in Hong Kong, Special Administrative Region, is also another proof. What happened in the year 2019, actually you see riots, you see mobs, but then the American politicians described that as a kind of beautiful scenery. Now, the order is already restored. People enjoy their life. Investors enjoy their business. But some Americans, especially those on the Capitol Hill, they don't want to see that.
So that's why they assume that China is the one who violates the international law.
When we say that the US violated international law, actually it's not only what's enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, which basically says that, and in a very explicit way, non-interference in domestic affairs, internal affairs of other countries, and respect sovereignty and territorial integrity. That's international law. And also that's the commitment made by the US government in their international instruments bilaterally agreed upon with Chinese government. That's the one China policy. And that's what they commit to is they only maintain unofficial interaction with people on the Taiwan island within the framework of one China policy. That's international law.
I want to know, so Nancy Pelosi is the highest ranking official from US to come to Taipei. But before that, in 1997, I'm sorry, the former US House Speaker Newt Gingrich, he also visited Taiwan. But as Nancy Pelosi said, I will quote her saying, she said, China didn't make much of a fuss about that. And also when the 5 US senators, including the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, they came to Taiwan, but they think, why does China react this aggressively right now?
2 points. First, I can assure you, whenever the American side takes any move violating China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, especially in the context on the Taiwan question, China will always, we have always and will always take necessary measures accordingly. That's our principled position. Secondly, this is, you could see the argument from the US side that, well, that was not the first time you had seen some other presidents, but I don't know whether you will agree with them when their historical or their misbehavior in the past could justify the reputation of their wrongdoings today. I don't know whether you still recall. Also in the 1990s or the early years in this century, when the American politician produced a small bag of laundry powder in the Security Council of the United Nations to justify their war against Iraq. That already became a joke, but a very unfortunate joke on Iraq people, on the civilians, innocent civilians there. So then, are they entitled to repeating this kind of behavior again, just because that happened in the past? I don't think any people will agree, except maybe some American politicians.
I understand. So we are going to the drills that's happening around Taiwan. So we have heard from, let me digress into China's response to the visit about that. We have heard from how the exercises are meant to test out the PLA's joint combat capability and its weaponry, to how it is a step towards changing the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. In truth, what does China aim to accomplish from these drills that just finished yesterday, completed yesterday? Am I wrong?
Actually, the PLA has already made an announcement. For this period, it might come to a suspension for this part of the exercise. But come back to your question. I think, first of all, we have to make sure who changed the status quo? What is the status quo across the strait? From the very beginning, the status quo is that both mainland and Taiwan are part of China. There is but one China. And that's also the commitment, as I just told you, made by the US government in the 3 communiques governing the China-US relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then, in the recent past years, what we have seen the separatist forces, the authorities on the Taiwan island, they try to push the separatist activities moves in a gradual way. They try to advocate the de-synthesization move on the Taiwan island. Mm-hmm. And what we have seen is also, as well, the American move, the American attempt to incite those kind of separatist activities. So actually, it's those American politicians who support that, and it's the Taiwan authorities that try to change the status quo. If that happens, that will change the basic framework governing the mainland's policies towards Taiwan Island, governing China's policies towards the United States, because we are obliged to respond. And when we respond, definitely we will respond not in a way, in a pace, as those separatist move people might envisage.
Mm-hmm. Since you mentioned about that, I would like to underline. So Nancy Pelosi, she said that she just wants to bring peace and promote democracy in Taiwan. So do you think by promoting democracy in Taiwan is the same as promoting separatism in that country?
Actually, when she said that she is coming to bring peace, so what's the result now? And I can tell you, even before she paid her visit in this region, we have already issued our warnings repeatedly to the American side, what kind of consequences it might be. Not only us, people in this region, and not only people in this region, people in the United States have already warned her that this might cause tension, not peace. She knows that. She knew that before she came. So actually, she is doing that intentionally.
To create the chaos?
Yeah.
Okay. And also, we noted that the Chinese government also sanctioned Nancy Pelosi and her family as the consequences of her visit. Is that true?
Yeah, we have already announced that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the relations between China and U.S. right now kind of bumpy, I would say.
It's not our fault.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for underlining that. So Taiwan's defense ministry believes that China is assessing operational plans by simulating attacks on the island through these drills, which to say that China is rehearsing like a full-fledged blockade and ultimately invasion. Would you like to remark on that?
Taiwan is just part of China. Taiwan Island is the territory of China. So actually within the framework of the territory of a sovereign state, actually is the discretion of the central government to carry out the exercises or any moves on its own territory and the nearby waters. So concerning whether the authorities on the Taiwan Island or some politicians on the Taiwan Island, they might have this or that kind of concern. There's one easy way out. Just come back to the one China principle and the framework that have already agreed upon by the two sides in the year 1992. The common understanding which enshrine the one China principle. But if any separatists, any forces try to break away from that, definitely the central government, the mainland, is entitled to taking any necessary measures. That's already stipulated in our national law against separatist moves, which was adopted in the year 2005. It was adopted publicly.
And if that happens, as a Chinese ambassador to Indonesia, what do you think and how does it impact Indonesia as part of the region itself?
I don't think many people would like to see that. So what's most imperative is that people who really care about the peace, stability, prosperity in this region, people who really care about the basic principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, which, in my view, according to my experience in the past 5 months, those kind of principles are also very prevailing here in Indonesia, in their Indonesia foreign policy. So I think what's most imperative is for all those countries, all those governments, all those people to unite together, to speak out louder against any move, any attempt to stir up issues, to stir up care in this region, and to preserve the principles in the Charter of the United Nations, to object any attempt to stir up separatist moves on other sovereign countries.
On Indonesia's part, they also, on our foreign ministry, had also announced that we support fully of One China policy.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything else about that?
I think I noticed the statement by the spokesman, Ambassador on this. I think I appreciate, first, as you just mentioned, when he specifically mentioned that the Indonesian government still stick to the One China policy. I think it's very important. And secondly, in the very beginning of his statement, he specifically mentioned that the Foreign Ministry of Indonesia did foresee that the move by Nancy Pelosi might be a problem, might cause tension in this region. So actually, I think from the very beginning, the Indonesian government is quite aware of the sequence of what's happening these days.
And now we are moving to economic question. I would like to underline how China has halted some trade with Taiwan as retribution to the visit, citing reasons pertaining to past affecting several of the products. However, Taiwan insists that it is due to political reasons. What is then to become of these trade relations, in your opinion?
First of all, I think the customs authorities on the mainland have already made public announcement on that. I think they are the authorities from the central government. They have to be responsible. They are supposed to be responsible, definitely, for the interests of the customers. Secondly, if what you said, what you quoted from the authorities on the Taiwan island, if they believe that this is a kind of politically motivated move, then they have to ask themselves why they are not faced with this kind of move several weeks ago, several months ago, several years ago, and why now? So if they really care about the interests and the benefits of the people on the Taiwan island, it's most important for them to correct the mistakes and come back to the real status quo across the strait.
And there are some Taiwanese analysts argue that China will bear the brunt in the scenario of an economic blockade to Taiwan. Taiwan has also claimed that China would pay a considerable price by launching a blockade. So what do you think about this? Does China already have a strategy for dealing with this situation?
I don't know what's the case with Indonesia, with other countries, but for China, for the Chinese government and the Chinese people, when it comes to sovereignty and territorial integrity, that's priceless.
Yes.
So you don't calculate that with the price.
Yeah. I really understand because I really appreciate and see how important sovereignty Taiwan for China, because you mentioned that several times, and also it brought me to question a statement from Joe Biden. He said that he would defend Taiwan at any cost in case China, for example, invade Taiwan many times, and for example, in the event of incursion. So how does China respond to that statement?
I already said that Taiwan is part of China. So even if in the last day this kind of scenario might come into being, it's not a kind of invasion. It's just China's necessary measures to achieve the reunification goal of the of the whole Chinese people. And concerning what you just quoted as President Joe Biden said,
Yes.
You have already noticed that whenever he came out and said this kind of words, there will be following clarification from the US government. That said, I think the Americans have already been told by the Chinese side repeatedly, don't try to underestimate China's will and ability to preserve China's unity, China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. That has been proven by history, and that will be proven by history if somebody still are suspicious about that.
But in Taiwan, they also held some military drills also in case China would invade it. So they think China will invade Taiwan, but for China, for you to say it's keeping the sovereignty.
Yeah. So actually, that's why I keep you alert. There are movements, there are forces on the Taiwan island that try to encourage and incite separatist activities. We have to be alert on that. That will have consequences not only across the strait.
I would like to go back to the reunification at the end of our session. But for now, I would like to ask you about the whole microchip industry between China, US, and Taiwan. So Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan might be for example, the beginning of cooperation in the microchip industry, as I've been told. So it means that the intensifying rivalry between China and US will be even more tense. So how will China respond to this?
Actually, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Chinese government has already made our comments on the Chip and Science Act adopted by the United States. From the very beginning, we have made it very clear that actually any attempt to distort the market and to intervene in the improper way of the international market these days are not acceptable. And you can see that actually while adopting this bill, the American government said that actually this bill is aimed at improving the competitiveness of the American industry. But from the very beginning, people are quite suspicious about it, whether it's in compliance with the American commitments in WTO. Okay, that's the American policy, their industry policy. They try to give huge subsidy to their own industries, which is against actually their own education worldwide on free market. Coming back to what kind of effect it might have on China-US relationship and China's own development, I have two words. First, of course, we are against any attempt try to intervene in a very improper way in today's general agreement on globalization, which definitely will have negative impact on not only China, but all those on board on globalization. Secondly, China has never just tried to rely on anyone else to develop our own ourselves. Even concerning all those industries, you can see that even in the very difficult time when China tried to develop our own industry complex, That was in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. We were faced with even more difficult outside situation. But China, we succeeded in moving ahead. That's it. Of course, we still would like to take an open policy. We believe that serves the interests of all countries, all peoples, all economies, because we still believe in the merits of the humankind, of a community for all humankind with shared future.
Thank you for your answer. So moving on to the diplomatic relations. So how would you say the tension now happening with Taiwan would affect the current effects, would affect China with another countries? For example, in the foreign ministers meeting with ASEAN foreign ministers meeting, there were walkouts and calls for restraints. What's your opinion on that?
According to what I understand, especially in our conversation with our Indonesia friends here, our counterparts here, I think all ASEAN countries, including Indonesia, made it very clear in a very explicit way that they stick to the one China policy. So I don't think there is any substantial differences between China and ASEAN countries. And when it comes to, in your word, the tension now, I think I also made it very clear to you. ASEAN countries know the sequence of how things have evolved to the current situation. So in China's words, it's for those who tie to untie, to undo the tie.
Okay, so this is our last question. I would like to ask about the reunification. So yesterday, the white paper, Beijing has just released a white paper, and it consisted with reunification peacefully with Taiwan. So, but you're saying the development now is in Taiwan right now. So, what will China do to make that dream come true? And Taiwan already has on their side, and then China insisted to Taiwan to be their part. Well, there is some kind of movement in Taiwan. They don't want to do this. So, how do?
First of all, thank you very much for your notice of the white paper we just issued. I've already actually prepared the English test for you. And actually, that's a very good document sizing up the evolution of the cross-strait situation and China's policies towards, and the mainland's policies towards Taiwan, especially in the past 10 years. So hopefully you could also have some time do some in-depth reading.
Okay.
Concerning Taiwan, some people's different idea on the Taiwan island, I can tell you, let's just see what are the basic facts. In today's world, among all the 193 members of the United Nations, around 181 recognize there's but one China, and China, the People's Republic of China, represents the government of the People's Republic of China, represents the sole government of China. So that's already the common sense. That's not only what China insists on. Come to your question, what we should do for the reunification.
Yeah.
I think basically there are two issues. First, we are always encouraging and we are always committing ourselves to further interaction across the strait, to enhance more mutual understanding, to enhance more cooperation that could benefit peoples across the strait and bring about common prosperity. Second thing, which is no less unimportant, is that we should always keep alert on any attempt to separate Taiwan from China. We should be alert against all those attempts on the Taiwan island. We should be alert, always be alert against those forces outside this region. Try to stir up issues, make chaos, and try to take advantage of this kind of situation to serve their own geopolitical agenda. That's immoral. That does not serve the interests of all the Chinese people, including people on Taiwan Island, that does not serve the interests of all people in this region. We who aspire for peace, stability, and prosperity.
I want to note that if, for example, there is an separatism act inside Taiwan, and there was military drills around Taiwan, and Taiwan thinks China will invade Taiwan. But I want to underline, will China really attack Taiwan as part of its own, or will China fight those external factors?
Actually, nobody would like to see this last scenario, but I think it's already stipulated very clearly and publicly in the China's national anti-secessionist, anti-separatist law, which was adopted in the year 2005. It's also on the website. It's stipulated very clearly and explicitly.
Okay, thank you. That would be all. Yes, I've made sure that every questions are given. That will be all. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador Lukang, for your answers and for your time and for your hospitality. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alia. It's really good to have this conversation in my residence with you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. Thank you so much. So, teman kumparan, demikian perbincangan bersama Duta Besar Tiongkok untuk Indonesia, Lukang. Saksikan berbagai tayangan wawancara eksklusif kumparan lainnya di YouTube dan website kumparan. Saya Alia Bunga beserta segenap tim yang bertugas pamit undur diri. Terima kasih dan sampai jumpa.